Good afternoon. My name is Gord Perks. I am the chair of the Budget Subcommittee. We have quorum, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, the Budget Committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today's meeting is being held in person in Committee Room 1 at City Hall. Members of the public who are registered to speak are in the room with us and also on video conference. This meeting is being live streamed, and you can find the link on toronto.ca/council. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. We are meeting today as a subcommittee of the Budget Committee. Councillor Chris Moyse, Deputy Mayor Amber Morley, and myself are members of one of two budget subcommittees that have been established to hear public presentations. Our City Council colleagues, Councillor Shelley Carroll, Councillor Lily Chang, and Councillor Jamal Myers are meeting right now at the North York Civic Centre to hear public presentations on the budget. We have approximately 96 speakers signed up to speak at our 3 meetings today at City Hall, plus another 39 registered to speak at the North York Civic Centre. I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to register to speak today. For those who are speaking, here's how our process works. We have speakers in person and online. If you are online, the video conference host will activate your microphone and you can turn on your video if you'd like. I will call each name. The internet has decided that my voice shouldn't carry. Just a moment and we'll check into this. All right, I'm told that the problem is solved. I was describing how the process works for speakers. We have speakers in person and online. If you're online, the video conference host will activate your microphone and you can turn on your video if you'd like. I will call each name on the list in order. You will have 5 minutes to speak to the Budget Committee. After you speak, please don't run away. Members of the committee may want to ask you questions, so check about that before you leave. After any questions from the committee, you're welcome to stay and listen or follow the rest of the meeting on YouTube. The clerk has received emails and communications from the public about the 2026 budget. Those communications are being made available to members on the CMP, the clerk's meeting portal. I encourage members of the public to send their comments to the Budget Committee throughout the budget process by emailing buc@toronto.ca. This is the public's opportunity to speak about the budget. This is also our opportunity to consider your comments and input before we make our recommendations to the mayor. We appreciate you taking the time to participate in the City of Toronto's budget process. Okay. We will now turn to our deputants for this afternoon. The first person listed is Joey Nicholson Landau from the Parkdale Community Food Bank. Joey? Yeah, come on up. Yep, perfect. And just push the button so that the green light comes on. And then you're all set. Take a seat, make yourself comfortable, relax. Today, we're all friendly.
Wonderful. My name is Joey Nicholson Landau, and I'm an operations manager and frontline worker at Parkdale Community Food Bank. I spend most of my time in our drop-in space, helping with our day-to-day operations, so I'm familiar with how many people access our services. Every month, we feed an average of 15,000 people, which is a 2,000-person increase since mid-2024. Every day, an average of 350 people walk through our doors to get food for themselves and their households. I see many of the same community members every week, so I talk to a lot of people. I know that the vast majority of our clients are renters, about 80%. Our clients tell me they often have to choose between paying rent and buying food, so they end up going hungry because it's too risky to jeopardize their housing. Parents tell me they can't afford to buy both food and diapers. Seniors tell me they can't afford to buy the foods they need to stay healthy, like diabetes-friendly options, because those foods tend to be more expensive. Community members have shared with me that they can't afford to see their families back home because saving for travel is impossible. Many of our clients have also shared with me that they feel stuck in unsafe or uncomfortable living situations because they can't afford to give up their rental units and pay market rent, which currently requires a yearly income of approximately $86,000. Many of our senior clients are forced to live in inaccessible units, and many of our clients are living in units that are in a state of disrepair or infested with pests. Affordable housing is a solution to food insecurity. When people aren't spending nearly all of their income on rent, they have the resources to shop for the things they need and don't have to rely on food banks. We are here to help at Parkdale Community Food Bank, but we are also a Band-Aid solution. We have limited resources, and while we do our best to accommodate everyone, the best way to feed people is to provide them with the resources so they can make choices for themselves. We applaud the initiatives the city has undertaken to help housing availability and affordability, like the rent bank, as well as tenant support programs that help our community to know their rights and prevent evictions. We are asking for the city to continue to support affordable housing so that more people in Toronto can afford food for themselves and their families. The multi-unit residential acquisition program, for example, has helped protect over 1,000 affordable housing units, but as rent-controlled units continue to be difficult to access, much more funding for this program is needed. To conclude, investing in affordable housing in Toronto will help to reduce the need for food banks. At Parkdale Community Food Bank, we do our best to provide food to our clients with dignity and autonomy, but we know the best way to do this is to give people the resources to make their own choices. We know that food is more than just a basic right. It's a source of joy, culture, and community. No one should have to choose between paying rent and buying food. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Are there any questions? No? Thank you for your deputation and for the work you do.
Thank you.
Next, I have Ingrid Bundy, or Booding, sorry. Sorry about that, Ingrid, I should have known better.
One moment, I'm online.
Yeah, I can barely hear you though, Ingrid.
Can I share my screen?
Yeah,
Turn
we're
up
going to
my
give you
audio volumes.
We're going to give you the ability to present in just a second.
Okay, and I will turn up I've got my output volume as high as it can go. We're good?
I don't see your screen yet, but I can hear you clearly. Oh, there's your screen now.
Excellent, thank you so much. Well, it is a pleasure to be here and to share our ideas of how we can make a better Toronto. My name is Ingrid Boudet and I'm founder of No More Noise Toronto and I live in Ward 4. So we are a group that is focused on unnecessary noises that wake us up, keep us up, and disturb us day and night. We're a federal not-for-profit with a leadership team of now 17 people. We're data process and solutions oriented. We've got thousands of supporters. We're a member of the External Working Group for the Night Economy, and we've also met with the noise team and municipal licensing and standards, Toronto Police Services, and Toronto Public Health. So why noise pollution? Especially listening to the previous deputant, there are so many people in really hard places in our city. However, every single one of us does not have a defense from noise. And so reducing noise benefits every single Torontonian. The unhoused actually live in the loudest of places when you think about it. So by reducing noise, for young people, we improve their cognitive functioning. For seniors, we improve their social connections and activity. And for everyone else, it improves their mental and physical health and quality of life. So our requests are number one, to create a noise task force. Why? To improve operational efficiency. When I talk to Toronto Police Services about the loud vehicles, they say, and noise cameras, they say, oh, that's the city. And when I talk to the city about the loud vehicles, they say, oh, that's moving vehicles, so that's the police. So let's break down these silos and solve the issues together. Fiscal management as well, identifying technology-led enforcement solutions like noise cameras and area sound level monitoring will eventually reduce the need for expensive manual oversight and enforcement. And then service excellence, improving resident outcomes by tackling noise across silos and divisions. So what would be the cost of a noise source? Well, I think that there should be like 4 members, 2 MLS, 1 Toronto Police, and 1 other city staff member. Those 4 people, if they meet monthly for 1 hour with an average salary of $150,000, that's less than $300 per meeting and less than $3,500 annually. So for less than $4,000 a year in coordinated staff time, you can improve the outcomes and quality of life for almost all residents. The other request is funding for the noise team. They work really hard in the space that they've been given with their policies, and I think they need 24/7 staffing. We want a 24-hour economy. Well, guess what? So then we need noise bylaw officers that are available at 4 a.m. Right now they close at 2 a.m. So the full operating from the January 2024 operating budget briefing note, that would cost about $4.3 million, which is less than 1% of the budget today. So the city can resolve the number one nuisance complaint and improve quality of life for everyone for less than 1% of the budget. So they can also do with some technology, further invest to streamline enforcement and explore proactive monitoring, area sound level monitoring, noise cameras, and software to assist with data analysis. All of this technology is affordable, is used in other cities, and we can use it here. So again, why is noise important? It's a health hazard. Toronto Public Health has been tasked with reducing barriers and inequities that inhibit Torontonians from achieving health and well-being. Well, they're on mute when it comes to noise. It's also an equity and accessibility issues. The most marginalized communities are most disproportionately impacted by noise pollution. The Toronto Public Health Report from 2016 says the lowest income areas are the lowest income areas are 11% more likely to have 50% of residents impacted by unhealthy nighttime noise limits. We all know how crappy we feel when we don't sleep as well. And so that needs to be, so we need to manage that. People with mental and cognitive disabilities can be impacted more, and people who suffer from vision impairment cannot navigate the city safely. So again, our recommendations: formalize a noise task force. Let's work across divisions and bridge those gaps and invest in the technology. And that would create a better Toronto by reducing noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Thank you so much for your deputation.
Thank you.
Next, I have Keith Showers. Keith, are you with us? Hi, Keith, come on up.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of Council. My name is Keith, a longtime resident and community member of the Church in Wellesley Village for 23 years, and a proud member of the 2S LGBTQ community. Today, I speak as one of many whose lives have been upended by the failures of leadership right here in our historic heart of queer Toronto. I'm here to advocate for this year's budget to properly fund supportive housing, harm reduction services, and give less funding to police. Less funding for police. Toronto police are brutal with people with mental health disorders. They often use excessive force for people in mental health crises who don't have weapons on them, and we don't need 8 police to 1 person attacks. Also, Toronto police have failed our 2S LGBTQ community countless times. For example, the bathhouse raids in the 1980s. And let's not forget their negligence in the handling of the Bruce MacArthur case, whom I knew 2 of his victims. I agree with more fire and ambulance services, but Toronto police don't keep our streets safer, and I don't think they should get more money to terrorize people like me. I also think there should be more money for supportive housing and homelessness services. When I was homeless, it was so difficult to be out on the streets at 7 a.m. in the morning on cold winters when nothing was open and there was nowhere to go. This was during a time when there were no warming centers about 15 years ago. Housing. I don't think we need more shelters. We need more supportive housing so we can give mental health supports and harm reduction. You can give them a roof, but without the wraparound supports, they are not going to be able to maintain that housing. Harm reduction. Acknowledging that the province has cut safety consumption sites and harm reduction funding, the city still has an obligation to protect their people, whether that be from Mayor or Toronto Public Health. These services need to be funded because people are dying, crime rate is up, and how many parents have to bury their kids before the government gives a fuck? I've had to console and comfort too many parents to have lost their kids to drugs, and I can't imagine the pain of parents who have to bury their child. All of these 3 things come together in my neighborhood. No welcoming spaces for unhoused people, park space being renovated and therefore kicking them out, NIMBY neighbors who don't have any compassion or understanding for people who use drugs, and then calling police to harass people and kick them out. What gives anyone the power to hold people's lives in their hands? It's pretty much police playing God, choosing who gets to live and where. All of our gay clubs being demolished for luxury condos. It seems like we're being pushed out of our neighborhood. I almost don't recognize Church and Wellesley anymore after 23 years here. Because of all these reasons, I advocate and demand that the city properly fund supportive housing and harm reduction services and give less funding to police. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Are there any questions? Keith, thank you so much for your deputation today. Christopher Adala? Hi, welcome.
Hello there. My name is Christopher Dalla, and I'm from Ward 11. I'm here to voice my support for affordable housing and tenant protections in this year's Toronto budget. So specifically, I would like Toronto to have a bad landlord registry so that Toronto renters are more aware of their rights, have sanctions and fines and blacklists for bad faith landlords, and make reporting bad landlords easily accessible to tenants like me via Rent Safe Toronto, as Rent Safe Toronto requires you to make a phone call to them, so it is difficult if you don't have the ability to do so, or it is not safe for you to do so. Have resources for LGBT newcomers so that they know their rights, know how to rent here, and know what to avoid. There are corporate entities and private landlords that are taking advantage of newcomers like me. They're targeting people who don't know the rules, who don't know their housing rights, may not have English as a first language, and who are also disabled. My first landlord deliberately ensured that I had no rental receipts and a copy of my lease, so I couldn't prove I was renting from them. They took an illegal security deposit, and I wasn't able to get this back when they evicted me. So this led me to stay in hotels and led me to look for corporate landlords. Now, this is how I found out that there are corporate landlords, multiple companies, that take advantage of newcomers, both international students as well as families and young professionals who don't have any rental history as of yet. So my first corporate landlord actually broke my lease illegally after just a few months because, in their words, they were going to make the space for refugees. And they did not offer me any remuneration for this. So I quickly had to find a new place to live. My second landlord was also corporate, and The apartment building was full of bugs, and they could only exterminate these one at a time due to the fact that there were many landlords renting from the same building. My current landlord is the worst one. They target international students and newcomers and are now targeting young Canadian professionals who have never rented outside of their own family homes. So right now, they do not tell me when I'm going to have a new roommate. So I've had the wonderful experience of suddenly finding a stranger in my home and having had to tell them that I don't know this person, and if they don't tell me who this is, I would call the police. And that was the only reason they were okay with telling me that this person was my roommate. They've also let in supposed cleaning personnel into my apartment without telling me. So once again, I have had to wake up to people, to strangers in my home, and have had to actually tell them to tell me who these people are. And they're consistently acting as if I was the one in the wrong for asking for any security. And they're once again threatening me with various sanctions, such as an N6. And it has actually led to me having deep paranoia due to the fact that I have woken up on several occasions to strangers in my home. And they are 100%, and I know this for a fact, banking on the fact that I am a newcomer, do not know any rights here. I do not have family here, and I do not speak English as a second language. And it is just by sheer luck that I happen to speak English fairly fluently and have had some experience in the legal industry from my background back home. It is a much worse situation for those who are not as privileged as I am, who don't have any resources that I have access to as an disabled person, as a trans person, as a member of the queer community. And these are just 3 separate companies in this city. I happen to know the fact that there are many more that are doing this, not just in Toronto, but all over Ontario and all over Canada. And this is a situation that the government is purposefully being kept in the dark about. And it is something that I do think we should really do something about, because they are now moving on not just to newcomers, not just to people who are here temporarily on temporary visas, such as international students, but also to young Canadians who don't have any of the same resources that they did have, because it is also only fairly recently that we have started to consider factors such as credit scores and landlord references with regards to actually renting a space out to someone.
Thank you, Christopher. I'm going to stop you there. That's your time. Are there any questions? Don't go away. Don't go away. Deputy Mayor Morley has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, thank you for joining us, Christopher, and for sharing a bit about your experience. I'm just wondering if you have had any luck in connecting into legal clinics or any other supports within your community to help you navigate these unfortunate and not good situations with the landlords that you described.
For the first landlord, the one that had broken my lease, because in their words, they were going to use this space to rent out to refugees, I had not had the time to properly get any legal aid because I had to make a choice between finding a new place to live or fighting them. And it was the middle of December, so I had to make that choice to actually find a new place to live. And for the last landlord, my current landlord, every time they would break the law, and they have, every time, so I would just inform them, hey, you guys have actually broken this specific law in the RTA, this specific part of it, and then they would stop, but then they would start up again.
Yeah.
So it's a whole process with them.
I appreciate that, and I know sometimes having some supports around you as well, just to help along with your advocacy and navigating, can be helpful. So I'm just wondering if you're aware of the Federation of Metro Tenants Association. They're a nonprofit organization that support tenants of all kinds to know their rights and to help to navigate these kinds of situations. So highly encourage you, if you're still looking for some support, that they might be able to provide some immediate intervention, but your points overall in terms of improvements we can make to the city are really appreciated, and I thank you for that.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you.
Next is Essa Sami. Essa?
She's sick today.
Pardon me?
She's sick.
She's sick. Okay, thank you. Kez Hall? Hi, Kez.
Hello. Hi.
Welcome.
Hello. Wait, what time is it? Afternoon, Budget Committee and counselors and budget spending people. My name is Kez. I am a Black transgender man living in North York, and I'm here to support more money for specific housing. And not just any housing, LGBT housing, because I have dual citizenship. So I came from the United States, and I have had more trouble finding a place to live here than in my 27 years in America, and I went through a lot living there. Trans people are disproportionately affected by the systems that we have in place here when it comes to finding affordable housing. If you don't have a friend, if you don't have a GP, and if that GP doesn't put you together with a social worker, and you don't have time to scour the internet, or you can't get to a place with internet to find ads, and then when you do find an ad on Facebook, you don't get scammed, you're not gonna have a place to live, all right? So I'll tell you a little fun story. This summer I was homeless. For the first time in 32 years, I was homeless. From July to September. I was couch surfing. I was getting my ODSP, but I had to take that ODSP and spend it on places to live when my friends didn't want me in their space anymore because I didn't have a place to live. And then, because of that money that was no longer there, I couldn't get my medication. I didn't have access to transportation to get the resources and help that I need because I have nothing, because I have to choose between, arguably, having a place to live and anything else that I want, right? So then some time comes, and then I find a place to live in Scarborough. But Scarborough is on the other end of God's ass crack, and I'm not being facetious there. It will take you 2 hours to get to Scarborough, and then once you're in Scarborough and you have to get to somewhere else in Scarborough, it's gonna take you another 2 hours. Whenever transportation is gonna fix itself, I don't know, that's between you and God. But my experience renting as a trans person, it's horrible. I have to choose between being myself or pretending and putting myself in the closet. And I work too damn hard as a Black transgender man to be myself. So I shouldn't have to hide who I am to find a place to live. Because what's a basic human right? A place to live and something to eat, right? So I'm asking the city to put more money into funding, and specifically LGBT funding, because we're people. I think politicians forget, or people writing budgets forget that they're people, because you guys have a salary. You see us over here? If we don't go to work, or we don't get disability, or we don't do something else, we don't get to enjoy life. Funny enough, our tax dollars pay y'all, but we still have a struggle for life. And y'all look like you're sitting comfy. And that's no disrespect, because I went to school, but again, the way life is, the economy, I'm not blessed to sit and be comfy. The problem with Toronto is that the services that you have to help people are stretched so thin. And then the specific services for people like me are stretched beyond belief. And then we're not even gonna talk about the zero compassion for people like myself that are functioning drug users. And I'm saying that because I smoke weed, and apparently weed is a drug, but I know how to carry myself on. I also got a master's degree too, smoking that weed, so check yourself before you wreck yourself, all right? If y'all give people access to services to actually help themselves, we can build a better community. We wouldn't have to come up here and be angry. We wouldn't have to come up here and deal with shit and be in y'all faces and act a certain way, because we would have those services to live our lives. And then our community could thrive and we could be happy and we wouldn't bother y'all. But y'all like to lump people into statistics. Y'all like to say it's, oh, gay people want marriage, gay people just want to have sex, gay people want this. No, we want the ability to live. We want spaces that we can actually have an affordable rent with, and we want to have a life. I don't want me and my friends to have to choose between either paying our rent or food, or as my buddy Christopher had to deal with, landlords from hell. We just want life, and we want y'all to remember that we're people.
Thank you, Kez. Are there any questions? No? Kez, thank you so much for that.
No problem.
Do you want them back? You want them back? Kez, I'm sorry, Councillor Moyes had a question for you. I didn't see that.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed part of your presentation. Just, again, I do agree that more funding is needed for two
You can say it. Trans, LGBT people of color. You can say it.
for two LGBTQ
Thank you.
people. But are you aware that, for example, we do provide a lot of funding to the 519?
Yeah, that's who I came with today. What, you didn't think I did my research and extended my resources before I came here and yelled in your face?
Asking.
Don't insult my intelligence, please.
I'm asking a question. And also, are you aware that we also fund Hassle Free 100%? Mm-hmm. And we also fund the AIDS Community of Toronto as well.
Mm-hmm. And what's the waiting list to get into those spaces, sir?
Again, I do agree that we need to provide more funding. I'm not implying that we're funding enough, and we do try to do as much as we can. But are we in a good place yet? I don't believe so. It's not lack of trying. I need to say that.
I didn't say it wasn't lack of trying.
No, I'm saying that. I'm saying that. So, but thank you. No, that's it.
Kez, again, thank you so much.
No problem.
The next deputy is Daniel Tate.
All right. Good afternoon. Okay, I'd like to start my deputation in a good way by acknowledging the people who fund this municipal enterprise, the Toronto taxpayer. Let's reflect and remember that every word spoken in this chamber, every light bulb, and every salary paid, including those of city councillors, is funded almost entirely by the hard work and earnings of taxpayers and property owners. Nearly all of the city's $18.9 billion budget comes directly from them. We acknowledge that while taxpayers and property owners have endured an almost 20% increase in the last 3 years, only a small and insulated group decides how much of their income is expropriated to sustain a burgeoning municipal bureaucracy that continues to grow regardless of outcomes and results. We pay respect to those taxpayers because without them, this institution could not indulge in ideological excesses like renaming streets and public squares, painting roads with inferior and environmentally damaging red paint, nor fund harm reduction programs that result in a steady stream of drug paraphernalia littering our streets, sidewalks, parks, and playgrounds. In this spirit of acknowledgement and with an eye to the future, we recognize the Toronto taxpayer and revere their tolerance for being taxed. Now, I'd like to offer some observations and questions with respect to the budget. Toronto Public Health is requesting $307 million to fund, among other things, initiatives described as, quote, chest feeding programs for milking humans, and an expansion of harm reduction programs for, quote, people who use drugs. What percentage of this $307 million budget will be allocated to these specific initiatives? Next question, in a surprising turn of events, Toronto Shelter and Support Services is requesting a lower budget in 2026, $786 million, despite previously tracking towards the $1 billion mark. Given the documented financial irregularities involving third-party operators, including concerning issues with One Community Solutions, the vendor who received $40 million on a sole source contract, are there plans in 2026 for a forensic audit of this division? Third, with respect to the Housing Secretariat, who is requesting $866 million, what is the budget for overspending and paying far over market value for properties that are to be converted to harm reduction shelters? Fourth, several $100 million from the New Deal were allocated for capital repairs to park facilities. Yet in 2025, park infrastructure remained in poor condition, including broken water fountains, inadequate landscaping, and deteriorating basketball courts. Where has this funding gone, and will staff within Parks and Rec be held accountable for these outcomes? Speaking of Parks and Recreation, they are requesting almost $500 million with a $4.3 billion 10-year capital plan. Given the magnitude of this request, will City Council demonstrate the moral clarity to save a beloved heritage facility, the Weston Arena, that has been neglected by the city, and commit the funds needed for its revitalization? Will Parks and Rec commit to the capital repairs needed for Moss Park Arena, another gem that has suffered from years of neglect? Or will Councillor Moyse attempt another hostile takeover? With respect to economic development and culture, asking for $112 million, what is the budget allocated in 2026 for renaming streets, squares, or other civic assets? 8, the TTC is requesting $3 billion, over $250 million more than last year. Yet budget notes contain sparse detail on improving safety across the network. Instead, riders are encouraged to download an app. What is the budget allocated for the development, maintenance, and promotion of the Safe TTC app? Last but not least, in Councillor Bravo's ward, Davenport, neighborhood conditions in 2025 appeared notably neglected, with excessive weeds and poor ground maintenance. What is the 2026 budget for weed control and ground maintenance, and who will be accountable if upkeep of the public realm continues to deteriorate? Finally, with respect to solid waste management, they are asking for $406 million. What is the 2026 budget allocation for replacing our pathetic garbage bins, a legacy of a terrible deal signed during the David Miller era?
Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Daniel? Seeing none, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
The next deputant I have listed is B. Marie, who I believe, yeah, B, I understand you're online. Hi, B, I can see you. I can't hear you, though.
How about now?
I can, but maybe you're a little quiet.
All right, how about that? A little better?
Could maybe you hold the microphone a little closer?
Headphones. There we go.
I guess that's the best we're going to do. Thank you so much for joining us. You've got 5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. So I go by B, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm a community worker, and I'm a resident of Leslieville, but with someone who holds 4 jobs, I kind of work all over the city. I'd like to start with a story, if I can. The first time I had to administer naloxone and perform CPR on someone who was experiencing an active overdose, I had been working at a drop-in for about 3 days. His name was John. He had a beautiful dog named Cash, and he loved doing crossword puzzles. John loved doing crossword puzzles. I'm not so sure about the dog, but despite our best efforts, we couldn't successfully resuscitate him that day. And I think about him every day. And in so many ways, I could have been John, but I get to be here with you folks today. That day, I went from administering naloxone to making about 150 sandwiches for unhoused folks, and then doing street outreach. And so all of that kind of happened within a couple hours. And in a lot of ways, that's what it's like to be a frontline drop-in worker. It's hard work, and it doesn't stop. And so we wear all of the hats that need wearing, and even when we don't have the capacity to carry those hats, we do it. So that our city's most vulnerable people have access to things like social service resources, food, clothing, harm reduction supplies, and essentially a deep sense of belonging. I came to community work through lived experience with homelessness, substance use recovery, and pretty deep social isolation. And I would love to say that my experience of being a drop in service user and a drop in worker is unique, but the truth is, it's not. Drop ins provide essential services and are life saving hubs for those who are unhoused and precariously housed, and folks who are living with mental health and/or substance use support needs. So many of my colleagues and my peers are burnt out. Uh, the often invisible emotional and physical labor of our work is really heavy. A lot of us work additional jobs, 2 or 3. I myself mentioned working 4, to try and make ends meet. And it simply isn't sustainable. We are losing drop in workers because they can't afford to continue to do the work that they do. And the specialized harm reduction, crisis intervention, casework, community building, food access work, among so many other things that keeps people alive and connected to community. Decent work and wage parity for drop-in workers would mean that we could retain these highly trained community workers. The closure of many of our supervised consumption sites, which I fully appreciate was a provincial decision, has meant that that really critical work has fallen on drop-ins to kind of pick up. And to echo what Mel and Marianne from the Toronto Drop-In Network, they spoke this morning, but what they had talked about, TDIN has a report on wage parity, working conditions, and retention in Toronto drop-ins. It's really eye-opening, and I encourage all of you to read it, engage with it in this committee process around the budget this year. I'm a frontline worker. I'm in no way an academic, but the reports really shed a light on social policy in a way that can really inform decent work in our drop-ins in Toronto that scaffolds both staff retention and program development in a really meaningful way. I spoke about John earlier, but I'd like to end by sharing something about myself. This month, so January of 2026, I celebrated 3 years of sustained abstinence. And I moved into permanent housing after 3 very long years of hidden homelessness. We have a lot of women in Toronto and non binary folks who are currently experiencing hidden homelessness and kind of fly under the radar. I couldn't have done any of that without the drop in programs and workers who believed in me and supported me along the way. So, as a city and as neighbors, we really can't afford to lose them. Thank you for your time today. Thanks.
Thank you, B. Are there any questions for B? No? Thank you so much for your deputation today. Michael Longfield. I thought I saw Michael. Oh, there he is. Hi, Michael. You know the gig. Soon as you're ready.
There we go. Great. Thank you, committee councilors. I'm Michael Longfield. I'm here on behalf of Cycle Toronto and the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people who ride bikes in this city. Firstly, I just want to say that Deputy Mayor Morley sort of took some of the wind out of my sails when I was originally preparing this. I was very excited to see this motion coming from you, and I think it really speaks to the importance of this. It's hard to approve budgets and to know where that money is being spent without having an understanding of how it's being applied. And certainly, Cycle Toronto and our supporters are really happy to see the city still committed to building its cycling network. The 20 kilometers that were approved by council without any lane removals, working around the current provincial restrictions, I think shows both a lot of ingenuity and also a lot of tenacity and commitment to a really important vision. But it's not really clear how the current budget would still fit into that. And so again, really looking forward to this, seeing what comes out of this. I do want to sort of highlight this, and of course, this is something cycling advocates love pointing out is how well we're not doing. But do want to really sort of point this out as well, like as we're going to be talking about the budget and the decrease, that council did approve a 25-27 cycling network plan of over 3 years of building 100 kilometers. It works out to about 33 a year, and you can see based off of year one, we're well below that. And certainly what creates another concern on our part is that there's this proposed decrease in the 10-year capital plan from 175 to 132, which works out to about 42 million. And again, there's not really a lot of understanding around why that is, because council still seems committed or hasn't said otherwise that they're not committed to completing the cycling network plan. And again, we can sort of look at this as sort of correlation and causation and bikeways and budget, but that generally when we have budget, we have more money to build bikeways, and we have less budget, we have less money to build bikeways. And one of the things that we did see with the bikeways that were proposed or approved back in December was that they were more expensive than staff had originally planned, to kind of create these solutions to work around Bill 60 and to work around Bill 212. It required sort of more interventions, more creativity, sometimes more work with ECS. And so if anything, if we're committed to making our city more convenient for more people to choose to ride a bike and safer for more people, we have to make sure that we're allocating the appropriate amount of money. So again, I don't have a specific ask or a dollar value on this. I do ask that the committee really, sort of take back what they hear from staff in that report and basically ensure that we're funding this project appropriately. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Any questions? No? As always, a pleasure. Thank you, Michael. I understand Helen Armstrong is online. Helen?
Hi, everybody. It's really great to be meeting with all of you today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I'm speaking as a longtime community development worker in downtown Toronto, as well as Etobicoke. I share my views as a resident and do not represent my workplace right now. In my 18 years in this work, I've seen the high costs of poverty in Toronto. My concern today is that we are faced with an almost $94 million increase to the police budget. Meanwhile, we all know that crime for 2025 was dramatically down. Why didn't the police budget increase? Sadly, people were not allowed to exercise their democratic right recently at the Police Services Board to depute and criticize the proposed increase. If people had been allowed to make deputations, we might have heard from the really practical suggestions to reduce police spending from the Toronto Police Accountability Coalition and others, such as having one officer per car for many calls. Research shows that investing heavily in police does little or nothing to deter crime. Instead, academic research from 2024 finds that when we invest in community services such as safe consumption sites, much crime does drop. These sites offer substantial benefits beyond the help they provide to people who use drugs. McGill University researchers found positive impacts to the nearby areas with sites due to a decline in most crimes over time. We know Toronto's in the midst of a housing and food insecurity crisis. StatsCan research shows 1 in 4 people in Ontario now experience food insecurity. And as a previous deputant mentioned, food insecurity often leads to losing one's home. While it's important for the city to expand student nutrition programs, we also need a significant investment in drop-ins across Toronto. These points have been made well by at least 3 other deputants today. And we do know that drop-ins are faced with the overflow from the closed safe consumption sites, and they're dealing with very complex issues. These community spaces provide meals to many, as well as other support services, which ultimately, which I've observed, build community cohesion. There is thus less need for police to show up. I've seen firsthand concerns of low-income communities with policing. In surveys at the corner drop-in at the neighborhood group community services, a number of people expressed concerns about the high police budget. Some wanted it reduced, and some expressed alarm at continual harassment from police. I urge you to provide more funding for community services, including mediation and youth employment, the latter to the tune of 10,000 new youth summer jobs this summer. These programs help build capacity, prevent crime, and build cohesion. Savings from the police budget could also be applied to the much needed shelter and affordable housing systems in Toronto. The shelter system budget still needs more increase this year, as we know the rate of homelessness is up. Many people we work with at TNG have been repeatedly turned away from shelters. We also need more funding for the multi-unit residential acquisition program, especially at a time when arguably sales costs can be lower than they were in order to acquire these buildings. I must acknowledge the proposed budget investments that you are making to protect tenants through the rent bank increase, rent evictions bylaw, rent safe inspectors, and the upcoming maximum heat bylaw. These investments will certainly help tenants. However, we need much more truly affordable housing for those on lowest incomes. I also acknowledge the importance of a new luxury home tax. And I realize how difficult it is to push for sales and income tax portions and the proposed commercial parking levy, but I think we need to keep pushing on those. Finally, I want to echo the words of Wendy Porch from Center for Independent Living, who spoke about the need to prioritize disabled people in city budgets. This means ensuring more truly barrier-free affordable housing, better snow clearing around transit, and clearly embedding disability inclusion in all aspects of our city budgets. We can tackle crime less through policing and instead invest in community building. Research shows us that investing in community services, drop-ins, harm reduction, youth employment, and truly affordable housing produces lasting results. All these services help build stronger, cohesive communities and center the rights and lived experience of people who are typically excluded. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Are there any questions? No, seeing none. Helen, once again, thank you.
Thanks.
The next deputant I have listed is Stephanie Lai. Good afternoon, Stephanie. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I'm here because of Progress Toronto. I'm currently a social service worker student at George Brown, and I live downtown in Toronto Centre. I moved back to Canada from Hong Kong in 2024, and I'm hoping to fight for and work towards a more socially just city. I'm here to ask this board and city council to continue making the TTC more affordable through fare freezes and caps, while also investing in improving service. While I know there has been an emphasis on increased service in this administration, as a regular TTC rider, I am still facing slow and unreliable trips. I recognize a lot of funding has gone to basic operations and major projects rather than everyday service improvements due to past years of TTC neglect. However, as a full-time student who rides frequently, if service remains slow and inconsistent, I lose study hours, arrive late for placement, and end up waiting at stops in unsafe conditions. An unreliable TTC service doesn't just inconvenience riders, it reshapes everyday life for students and workers by making basic planning nearly impossible. As a student, undependable TTC service doesn't just make me late, it changes what I can say yes to. A single delay can mean missing part of a lecture or having to cancel or reschedule tasks. When I need to do multiple things in one day, the way the TTC is currently run makes that tricky. A fare cap will help me afford those trips, but it won't make trips easier. This is not just a transit problem, it is a barrier to education, employment, and well-being for students and low-income riders across the city. I am often forced to choose between standing around hoping a streetcar comes or walking to make sure I am on time. There have been many times when I am left standing at a streetcar or bus stop late at night. I often feel unsafe and uncomfortable waiting by myself. I feel much safer on the TTC around staff and other riders, knowing that I will be home soon rather than waiting around in the dark or walking home alone. Improving the service and making it more reliable makes my trip safer and less stressful. As a social service worker student, a well-funded, reliable transit system has the power to better support students, low-income workers, disabled riders, and racialized communities who rely on it every day. When the city pairs fare freezes with meaningful improvements to service, we are no longer forced to pay with lost time, stress, and safety, but can instead count on transit as a dependable way to move through the city. I'm glad we see fare affordability as a priority in this budget with fare capping and a fare freeze. Fare freezes and caps are not luxuries for students and low-income riders. They are common sense solutions to making the city more affordable. They are what make it possible for me to get to class, placement, and work without having to choose between transit, rent, and food. I ask that you pair affordability with a clear commitment to a safe and reliable transit system. In closing, as a social service worker student and downtown renter who relies on the TTC every day, I ask that affordability, reliability, and improved service be top priorities for the TTC budget. I want to see more investment to increase TTC service to ensure that nobody gets stuck waiting at a stop or having to walk because it's faster. Making the TTC more affordable and reliable is a concrete way the 2026 budget can support students and other low-income riders. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Thank you so much for your deputation. I have Camilla Holland. Hi, Camilla.
Hi, Councillor. The green is still on. Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear from the deputants today. It's a really extraordinary privilege to be here, and what a wonderful system and joyful opportunity to get to connect about a really important thing for the lives of so many. So I do have prepared remarks, which I will read. My name is Camilla Holland, and I'm the Executive Director of Young People's Theatre, YPT. At YPT, we see firsthand every day that the arts are not a luxury, they're an essential service. Every day, we welcome children, teachers, and families from across the GTA to a space where theater can strengthen abilities like problem-solving, communication, and creative thinking, and build confidence, empathy, and resilience. These are not just theater skills, they are life skills, the building blocks of compassionate, connected, engaged human beings. And when young people carry those skills into adulthood, they build a better society for us all. For nearly 60 years, and in a building that the city has deeded to us many years ago, YPT has been a space that sees, hears, and inspires young people through our productions, classes, and extensive community engagement, where thousands of young people see themselves reflected in the professional arts sector, where belonging is built through story, and where imagination becomes the bridge to understanding themselves and the people around them. But we are only one part of a delicate ecosystem. The health of YPT is inextricably linked to the health of strategic funding investments that make Toronto a global cultural capital. We depend on hundreds of arts professionals each year, actors, directors, designers, playwrights, craftspeople, technicians, teaching artists, and arts administrators to deliver our programming to tens of thousands of young people across the GTA. I'm here today to encourage the city to consider the arts sector a mature economic driver that requires stable, predictable investment. That investment means, in the case of YPT, that more than 80,000 children experience our shows at our city-owned venue at Front and Sherbourne. Our audience at YPT is vastly diverse in terms of culture, race and ethnicity, income, first language, gender, and privilege. For principals, teachers, and parents, the primary barrier to accessing programs in the arts is financial, and it is through consistent and sustained support that YPT is able to offer deeply accessible and subsidized ticket prices. YPT, of course, is one part of the mosaic of arts and culture organizations that are across the City of Toronto and are working hard to ensure that they provide accessibility. Last year, the Toronto Arts Council, the TAC, saw the highest number of applications in its history. This is a sign of a vibrant, hungry sector. In 2025, the city's $2 million increase plus the inflationary adjustment allowed the TAC to provide crucial operating increases and take on new clients, and we are grateful for that. Last year, over $16.8 million in highly assessed project and operating applications went unfunded. That is a gap equivalent to approximately 60% of the granting budget. We are leaving talent and economic activity on the table because we lack the resources to greenlight excellence. The city's own 10-year culture plan, Culture Connects, helps address this gap. Specifically, we thank you for the $2 million increase to the TAC base budget. This essential investment ensures that the sector continues to thrive. 90% of this funding flows directly to artists and over 500 arts organizations across the city, including YPT. Without this investment, we risk a talent drain where our creators are forced to take their skills and tax revenue that generate to other cities. In closing, investing in the arts is an investment in Toronto's present economic growth and future identity. At YPT, we are preparing the next generation of Torontonians to be creative thinkers. We need the city to be a partner, ensuring there is a vibrant city waiting for them to lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Camilla. Are there any questions for Camilla? No? Camilla, thank you for your deputation and for all the good work you do.
Thank you so much.
Lindsay Jolie. Hi, Lindsay.
Oh, good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, councillors and chair. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name is Lindsay Jolie, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Boost Child and Youth Advocacy Centre. Every year, approximately 1,000 of the most severe child abuse cases in our city come through our centre for investigation, medical evaluation, trauma-focused therapy, and court support. Boost CYAC is a multidisciplinary, community-based organization that provides a coordinated response to children, youth, and families who are faced with abuse and violence. It is one of Toronto's most essential, yet often invisible pillars of safety and justice. The coordinated services that are offered at Boost CYAC are life-changing for some of the most vulnerable in our community. Take, for example, an 11-year-old girl who came to our center with her mom for a child abuse investigation after making some concerning comments to her teacher. Through the forensic interview led by our on-site police and child protection partners, we learned that this young girl was experiencing ongoing sexual abuse by an older man who lived in her building and whose wife would sometimes babysit when her mom worked late. With the care and supportive approach of our investigative team, during her interview, this young girl also shared that she hadn't been feeling well lately, and she described some uncomfortable physical symptoms. Following consultation with our medical partners at the Hospital for Sick Children, it was identified that she was presenting with symptoms of a common sexually transmitted infection, and she needed a medical evaluation. With Boost CYAC's wraparound approach, this family was seamlessly referred to the appropriate clinic at the hospital, where she received a medical assessment and was treated for an STI. Within 2 weeks of her interview at Boost CYAC, our young client was connected to a trauma therapist, and she engaged in a 10-week counseling program that was focused on reducing trauma symptoms and increasing coping strategies. This investigation concluded with the man being criminally charged for sexually abusing her and 2 other children in the building. The case is before the courts, and this brave young girl is getting nervous about testifying. She and her mom are connected to our court support program, and when the time comes, we will work with this little girl and teach her what her job is as a witness. We will go to court with her, we will advocate for her rights as a victim of crime, and we will help to alleviate the stress and pressure that children face when they are made to testify in a system that was created for adults. Not every child in Canada or even in Ontario has access to a child and youth advocacy centre, but Toronto kids do. CYACs are a proven approach to reducing trauma and to improving justice outcomes. They bring together police, child protection, health providers, and victim supports in one child-centered and trauma-focused environment. This reduces the likelihood that a child must retell their story multiple times, a process that is known to intensify trauma. Additionally, providing trauma-specific counseling to children immediately following their disclosure is known to reduce the likelihood that they will develop ongoing long-term conditions such as PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Currently, the City of Toronto funds Boost CYAC at just under $340,000 annually. This investment is essential and deeply appreciated. This funding supports critical staffing that provides trauma therapy to kids after they disclose, court preparation and accompaniment when they are required to testify against their abuser, and primary prevention programming to school-aged children in classrooms across our city. That said, for a city of over 3 million people, and for an issue as large, complex, and costly as child abuse, this investment is no longer proportionate to the need. A doubling of the city's investment, bringing annual support to roughly $700,000, would be a meaningful, high-impact improvement, an opportunity to deliver measurable child safety outcomes in our city. This investment would allow Boost CYAC to stabilize staffing at a time when demand is rising. By doubling the city's annual investment, Boost CYAC could provide trauma therapy to 40 more kids and teens. We could prepare 45 more children to testify in court, and we could offer primary prevention programming to over 1,000 more students in our classrooms every year. Simply put, the proposal I put for you today to double Toronto's investment in Boost CYAC is a clear opportunity to support public safety through social supports, delivering a safer Toronto for everyone. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Deputy Mayor Morley has a question for you.
Hi, Lindsay. Thank you for joining us. I think we met before at a site visit, and I was really honored to join and come visit the Boost Center and learn more about the really important and impactful work that you all do there. I'm just curious, in terms of the funding structure, I know typically child and youth advocates and the work associated with that, there have some provincial involvement as well. Is there currently funding for Boost coming from the provincial government as well as the City of Toronto?
We do have funding from the provincial government and some funding from the federal government. One of the challenges I experience at Boost is because we cross so many sectors, there's no one federal department, provincial ministry, or city program that will wrap their arms around and own CYACs. And so we have a patchwork of funding from multiple different sources.
That's helpful to know. I also know that the Toronto Police are important, critically important partners in the work that you do, and you shared that heart-wrenching story. How does it work with the embedding of the police within the Boost Center and the funding related to that? Is there any funding flowing through the Toronto Police budget to the work at Boost?
When we created this partnership model in 2013, where we co-located all of our professionals involved in child abuse investigations, we moved bodies into one space, and we all function as our own organizations. Boost is the umbrella that brings the partnership together. So everyone, our partners at Kids Hospital, Police, Child Protection, they all continue with their own funding streams, and we work under a cooperation agreement to provide a wraparound and a multidisciplinary service.
That's really helpful context for me as well as we take this back. Thank you again for joining us.
Chair, I have a question as well. It's Councillor Rachel Cherneslin.
Hi, Councillor. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the delegate for her presentation, and I also had a chance to visit Boost in the last little while, and the services provided are, not necessarily the ones that we hear about the most, but they probably have significant impact beyond what most of us can imagine in terms of what happens. And I guess I wonder, because you're having to put together sort of a patchwork funds from different sources, can you speak a little bit to the impact of what sustainable, predictable funding would mean, and what the impact long-term could be of this, aside from just numbers of cases, I guess?
Yeah, I can speak to when we're looking at a patchwork of funding sources and we don't have sustainable funding. We are often reliant on project-based funding that is coming from different sources, which means we're not able to plan long-term. We're not able to do a human resource audit and understand if we had this much sustainable funding, how many employees could we have, because we're consistently on short-term funding contracts. So it makes it really difficult to predict how we can staff our organization. With short-term contracts, you lose a significant amount of efficiencies. There's a ramp up and a ramp down time for any employee because you don't want to pull a child's counselor away from them in the middle of their work. And so you're consistently not maximizing your employees' ability to serve kids because you're working within funding cycles that are too short considering the work that we're doing. Excuse me, the last time I had this conversation, I shared there's a 30% increase in the amount of kids we can see in a therapeutic setting when we have a full-time permanent employee. When there's somebody who, when they close a case, they reopen another case immediately, that increases a huge efficiency, and we'd be able to see many more children in a therapeutic capacity. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
It does. Thank you so much. And I guess my one other question that I have, is there ever, like, this is extremely demanding work for everyone involved in your workplace. Do you ever get grants to support the staff as well?
That's a great question, and it's one that's come up more recently. I've been with Boost for 25 years, so I've had a lot of conversations about how hard this work is, and it is that. We have not had a specific grant that supports the wellness of our staff. It's not that we haven't had the conversations, but it's something that granting bodies are, to my knowledge, just now becoming more open to, particularly around some of our private foundation grants. And so it's something that we're keen to look into some more. The consistent message we hear is we love doing this work. This work is so important to us, and it is very draining, and it is very difficult to maintain the level of commitment over time. And so it's a really important factor in how we support our staff. And we're really conscious of it. This work is different than, the therapeutic work we do is different than general mental health. Working in trauma is a much more intense service. And so we recognize that when we think about how we support our staff doing this work.
Thank you. I think that's an important and probably unexplored area of focus for a lot of folks, and I just want to say thank you. It's been hard to forget what I learned visiting your site and the impact that you have on kids and families. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, thank you so much. That concludes your deputation today. Deputy Mayor Morley, can you take the chair for just a moment? We're just right there.
Great. It's my first time leading the bridge. Thank you. Our next deputant this afternoon is Adam Roy Cahoon, who's joining us by video conference. Is Adam online? Great. We'll just give it a moment for Adam's screen to come online and to get his audio, and we'll give you your 5 minutes. There you are.
Hello.
Good afternoon. We're just a little low on the audio. Adam, can you do a test?
Now that I'm getting closer,
Perfect.
I've noticed that as videos start, the volume slowly elevates.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually a new feature in WebEx.
There you go. Well, you've got 5 minutes. I'm going to start your time now. Go right ahead. We can hear you clearly.
So there's two things I want to talk about with you today. The first thing is, over the next few years, I would love to see Toronto help get a proper menu of revenue tools that we can actually work with. Right now, it seems like we are only using the same revenue models and are very much having a lot of issues and limiting our capacity. If you look at a lot of the international cities and cities around, they've used creative ways to get more revenue and stuff. And whenever the city has talked about revenue tools, it does actually, I think, get more people talking about the financial push rather than just the limited budget. I know most of our ideas are always batted down by the provincial government, like road tolls, and the parking levy hasn't really helped go anywhere. But I just want over the next few years a nice report about other revenue options we could look at and actually start a conversation rather than being the city where the cupboard is bare. And the only thing I'm asking for as an individual this time around, and I want it noted, is that I would like to have it so that we could actually have proper 311 portal for people with disabilities to actually be able to communicate and show that we're disabled, so that to show that when we are calling in for a 311 issue, that we can't usually just walk around a barrier or issue or big pothole on the sidewalk. And for somebody that, does use 311 a bit, but might use it more if I'm not having to fill out every form all the time. And it would also help during times of snow clearing for me to properly have my issue properly triaged, because last snow event, the big one last year, there were all kinds of things where they said, yes, priority was given to people with disabilities, but our issues were lost in the shuffle because it wasn't easy to indicate on the form to 311 that we were people with disabilities. So that is an issue that if there is a bit of extra money, or even if it doesn't need extra money, I just want the right department to realize that 311 and accessibility is an issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adam, for your deputation. There's some claps for you in the room, even though I'm not supposed to encourage that. But I did want to check if there's any questions for Adam. And I will note for you, Adam, there is a Closing the Loop initiative happening at 311, and this is a really constructive piece of feedback we can take to them around being able to ensure folks can identify as disabled as we continue to improve that process. Right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
All right, the next debutant we have is Jason Stevens in the room. Thank you for joining us, Jason. I'm going to reset the clock as you get seated. Just make sure to hit the mic in front of you till it goes green, and you've got 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Wow. I want to say thank you, first of all, to Councillor Moyes, through the chair. I have to thank the city and the people I've met, not only today, but since growing up in Willowdale in 1971. Councillor Perks, I sat in your council chair when I ran in 2011 for city council against, in quotes, Mike Layton. And the chair, Councillor Perks, I tell this funny story. The Councillor Perks looked down at me like Senator Palpatine looked at Luke Skywalker, because I was sitting in his chair when Sarah Thompson was running for mayor. So it's nice to see all of you here, councillors, and I think the city, as the residents have noted, deserve some thanks. I'm going to hold some of my applause to the end, or quote Caesar and Shakespeare, that perhaps I've come to praise Caesar, perhaps not. 61% of residents believe that councillors are doing a good job. One of my passions and one of the areas of the budget that I'm concerned about is, and it's not a budget line that I'm aware of, is around plant-based nutrition, health, and as I deposed in 2024 at the Environment and Infrastructure Committee that Councillor Sachs was present at, I believe the city should not fund any killing of animals for food. Okay, I mean, most of us in this room would agree that we love animals. Many of us believe in social justice. I had a business in 2000, 2004, so I'll introduce that. My name is Jason. I ran Jay's Gourmet. One of my customers was a fellow named Jack Layton. I catered Jack's victory party. And I've had a big passion to get the city, I've worked with other groups to ask the city of Toronto and other cities to no longer do anything that supports the slaughter, like we have Helen's Meat Packers in one of your wards, the destruction of the killing of animals. We also believe, and my research is that plant-based nutrition is healthy for students, the 239,000 students in the Toronto District School Board, through the chair, should see their mental health improve if they consistently have a diet of plant-based foods. So your budget and your choices, as someone mentioned, does impact the health, can combat obesity. All the science that I know of from the Hippocrates Health Institute, a group of doctors in the United States, to my colleagues here in Toronto, would advocate for making sure the budget does not support abattoirs like Helen's Meat Packers, or more, I guess, practically for you folks, the supply and demand, supplying of any products that contain or have been derived from the slaughter of animals. Basically, a plant-based city, to me, is a city that opposes violence, that doesn't just sit as a social justice activist and say, well, I love all humans, all animals, and I want to see, for example, the oppression of Trump and ICE agents in the United States reduced. Then I ask you here as well to do what I do, and it wasn't easy, and it's not always fun to stay on a plant-based diet, but to not fund anything that would support slaughter of animals. Animals, to me, are companions. I think this city has been very good about educating its students, its citizens, to fight Doug Ford on his destruction of wildlife, to encourage citizens to love animals. We have programs in the city that encourage petting dogs and cats for mental health issues. So again, my name is Jason, and it is a pleasure to be before many of you who I've known for many years. Some I've met most recently. I worked for the Solicitor General's office, so it's not my first rodeo, and I don't like rodeos. Thank you, Councillor Perks, and all the deputants. It's been an honor.
Thank you. And in the words of Palpatine, good, Jason, good. I can feel your anger. It gives you focus and it gives you strength. Are there any questions? Nope? Okay. Thank you very much, Jason. The next deputy I have is Glenn White. No? Celia Wandio? Celia, I understand you're online. Can you speak up so we can hear you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome. You've got 5 minutes to make a deputation. You can start as soon as you're ready.
Thank you so much. My name is Celia Wandio. I'm the co-director of development with the Kensington Market Community Land Trust. KMCLT is a community-led nonprofit that seeks to remove property from the speculative market and return it to community benefit. We're a part of a growing movement of community land trusts across the country who are implementing innovative solutions to the housing affordability crisis. We currently own and manage 3 properties with a total of 40 affordable rental units and 17 commercial spaces in Kensington Market. We acquired our very first property in 2021 with the support of Section 37 funds from our city councillor. Our 2 subsequent acquisitions, both completed in 2025, were supported by funds from the Multi-Unit Residential Acquisition Program, or MURA. Thanks to the funds provided through MURA and Section 37, we've been able to prevent displacement of low-income community members and convert at-risk market rental units into permanently affordable community-owned housing. Our work is not done. There's a continued need for more high-quality affordable housing in our community, and we continue to see the erosion of Kensington Market's naturally affordable market housing stock. New affordable housing construction does play a role here, and KMCLT is delighted to be partnering with the City of Toronto and with St. Clair's on a 78-unit affordable housing development at 35 Bellevue Avenue. However, new development is not sufficient to respond to this crisis. Funding the acquisition of existing affordable housing is the most sustainable, the most cost-efficient, and the quickest affordable housing solution that the city can deploy. The City of Toronto's MURA program was a result of CLT-led advocacy and collaboration with the city. It's been a major success, with aspects of the program being replicated across Canada. Together, community land trusts and the City of Toronto have helped policymakers across the country recognize the vital importance of preserving existing affordable housing. Given the importance of the MURA program, I'm disappointed to see that only $46.8 million is budgeted for 2026, and no specific funding commitments have been made for 2027 or beyond. $46.8 million may seem like a lot, but it translates to just over 300 units, and this is a drop in the bucket compared to the size of the crisis, and it will lead to many valuable units of affordable housing being lost to the nonprofit sector forever. The last MURA RFP in 2024 was oversubscribed, and while a record-breaking 700 units of affordable housing were preserved, many qualified housing providers were still unable to be funded. While I recognize the need for investment from other levels of government, and I do appreciate the city's continued pressure on provincial and federal governments to fund acquisitions, it's vital that the city commit to maintaining or increasing MURA funding year on year. We can't simply wait for more information on the Canada Rental Protection Fund, which may not be responsive to the unique needs of the City of Toronto. I'm therefore here today to request that the City of Toronto increase the 2026 MURA budget to $100 million. This could protect 600 units of affordable housing in the span of a year. This means saving 600 households from the risk of rent eviction, of displacement, and sadly, for some, the risk of becoming unhoused and reliant on our burdened shelter system. I'm speaking on behalf of KMCLT, but I also know that community land trusts and other nonprofits across Toronto are building capacity to acquire and preserve affordable housing. We have the skills and the drive to make a significant impact on housing need in our communities. We simply need you, our City Council, to support us with the necessary funding. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Celia, thank you for your deputation today.
Thank you.
David Myers. Hi, David, welcome. It's finicky, the button, isn't it?
Hey, I like one of these.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, councillors, and everyone participating in person and remotely. My name is David Myers. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a Black disabled Toronto settler. I work at the Centre for Independent Living in Toronto, known as SILT. And I'm speaking on behalf of SILT and the GTA Disability Coalition.
David, I'm going to ask you to get a little closer to the microphone, okay?
Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of SILT, better, and the GTA Disability Coalition, which we convene. Toronto is estimated to have about 570,000 residents with disabilities. And more than 1 in 4 Torontonians are people with disabilities. Despite our numbers, as my colleague Wendy Port said earlier, disabled residents remain pretty deprioritized in most city strategies, programs, and budgets. We don't see ourselves reflected in this budget very much. More and more disabled folks report finding it impossible to thrive in this city due to inaccessibility. Many have turned to food banks and mutual aid platforms to close the huge gap
left by inadequate income security programs. I know you've heard the stories from your constituents. It's a bleak story of exclusions for disabled people across our city. Nowhere is our community's exclusion more harmful than in the area of housing and homelessness. Toronto's affordability and housing crisis and our homelessness emergency are key drivers of our community's precarity. In just a few years, disabled residents have become 4 times more likely to experience homelessness. Just in a few years, 4 times. And this is a growing trend at a time when Toronto's housing and shelter stock remain overwhelmingly inaccessible and getting worse by the year. As you all know, we lose more accessible stock than we gain year after year. And we hear all the stories ourselves from our community. While homelessness is a mass disabling crisis, our partners at Toronto Shelter and Support Services and the Toronto Alliances to End Homelessness tell us that day by day, disabled folks are still routinely refused shelter spaces in our city's shelters and provided no alternative options once they are refused, because inaccessibility is a structural problem in our city, and so there's no place for them to go. So a lot of folks are left on the streets to fend for themselves, to maybe end up in encampments, or end up outside of TTC buildings, et cetera. And this is becoming worse and worse for our community. Yes, building deeply affordable, supportive, and accessible housing options is a critical policy solution. We all know we must find more revenue tools in order to pay for the fair city that we want to have for community. But we must also find shelter spaces now that provide some access for unhoused disabled people. We have stock. Some of the stock is woefully inaccessible structurally because of how old they are and where they were built. We must have shelters with some capacity to be renovated or retrofitted so there's some access for disabled folks who may use wheelchairs or scooters or other devices to access a safe shelter space as a human right. And we hear stories from our community all the time that people don't have those options, have no place to go. I have a few budget asks on a more positive note. On poverty reduction spending, we welcome the $2.6 million enhancement to the rent bank. That's a step in the right direction. The increase of the rent safe program. The $48 million committed to MURA, as Celia said earlier, is inadequate, but it is something. It needs to be built on year after year in order to come close to addressing the overwhelming need that there is in community. We need more revenue tools that can actually move this process forward, and some bold decisions by council to actually make those decisions.
David, I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you there. You're at time.
Okay.
Are there any questions for David? No?
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us today. Brian Doutright? Brian, I understand you're online.
Hi there.
Hi, Brian. Welcome. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, members of the Budget Committee, for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Brian Doutright. I'm a registered social service worker and program manager at the Weston King Neighborhood Center, a drop-in center located in York South-Weston. I've worked here in the drop-in for the past 4 years, and I am here to speak about the critical role drop-in centers play in our communities and why increased funding is urgently needed to expand services, hours of operation, staffing levels, and staff compensation. Drop-in centers are far more than meal programs or places to escape the weather. They function as mental health emergency services. They provide preventative care, life-saving interventions, and when the system has failed entirely, compassionate end-of-life support. Drop-in centers absorb the impact of systems the city does not control, such as hospitals, psychiatric units, long-term care facilities, and supervised consumption sites, as well as systems the city does control, including shelters and housing. Drop-in centers are sanctuaries for the most vulnerable people in Toronto, for people experiencing homelessness, exiting homelessness, survivors of intimate partner violence, refugees, and seniors being crushed by the cost of living. Despite this essential role, drop-in centers are chronically underfunded. Our funding through the Toronto Shelter and Support Services Division has remained largely unchanged for over a decade, aside from a temporary COVID response in 2023 and a $900,000 increase in 2024, which only amounted to approximately $40,000 per drop-in. I do see that there is a proposed $6 million increase this year to drop-ins, but I still urge that to be expanded. With the increase in funding, the responsibility of caring for unhoused and underhoused community members will continue to be pushed onto hospitals, the TTC, and the justice system, increasing public costs and worsening social determinants of health. If we do not invest in drop-in centers and housing now, we will continue to pay much higher costs elsewhere. Drop-in centers also play a critical role that directly improve the quality of life for the most vulnerable participants. We provide low-barrier access to informal case management support, which is essential because many people do not have the capacity to book, track, and attend appointments on their own. Services such as housing help centers, settlement agencies, and legal clinics, while doing great work, often require advanced scheduling and, in many cases, an advocate to navigate and facilitate the process. Drop-in centers fill this gap by offering immediate, on-the-spot advocacy, practical support, and ongoing follow-up care when people need it most. I would like to briefly share two stories that demonstrate the impact of drop-in centers. Last summer, an unhoused senior was discharged from hospital with nowhere to go. He came to our drop-in seeking help when he couldn't find shelter placement himself. We did secure him as a safe shelter placement, and within 1 to 2 months, helped him find affordable rental unit that met his health and safety needs. He is now housed and stable, but without immediate support, he may not have survived long on the streets due to his ongoing medical conditions and age. In another case, a woman with a terminal illness was living in an abusive home and had been removed from the city's rent geared to income waitlist after missing a housing offer. I appealed the decision on her behalf and had her file reinstated. With continued support from our drop-in, she received a new housing offer and moved into a safe, affordable home. She is now able to spend her remaining time in life with dignity and peace. These are just two examples of over 300 people I advocated for alone in 2025, but for every success, there were many losses. Increased funding would allow us to reduce those losses and expand the support so many people desperately need. I would also like to share two things I heard this morning on my way to work. Two of our most dedicated and hardworking volunteers disclosed to me that they have been experiencing homelessness for the past 2 months, yet they have continued to show up and volunteer. This speaks volumes about both their commitment and the reality facing people who rely on these services. I also want to highlight our Tuesday grocery giveaway. Participants receive a bag of groceries, and this morning we reached an all-time high, distributing 167 bags in less than an hour. Food banks are struggling to keep up with rising demand, and drop-in centers are increasingly filling the gap to ensure people can meet their most basic needs. My recommendation is simple: increase funding to drop-in centers so we can expand services, support our workforce, and meet the growing levels of poverty and homelessness in the city. Thank you for your time, and I urge you to support these recommendations.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions? No? Brian, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Next, I have Monica Pierce. Monica, I understand you're online. Oh, you're here. Look, you booked a video thing, and then you thought, why not go to committee room 1?
Somebody had to stay at the center to make sure things ran, so Brian got the short straw.
Very good. So you've got 5 minutes. You can start when you're ready.
Thank you. So good afternoon, members of the Budget Committee. My name is Monica Pierce. I'm the drop-in program manager at the Weston King Neighborhood Center in Ward 5. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here to talk about drop-in programs, where they sit in the city's budget, and why they are essential to Toronto's ability to respond to growing social, health, and safety pressures. When people cannot access shelters, when they are discharged from hospitals with nowhere to go, when they are not safe at home, or when other systems are closed or overwhelmed, drop-ins are where they land. We do our best to offer low-barrier preventative wraparound services. People come to us for food, warmth, safety, harm reduction, crisis de-escalation, housing help, and navigation through systems that are increasingly complex and fragmented. Drop-ins are funded through the Toronto Shelter and Support Services operating budget. Drop-ins like ours are day programs, and by providing people a place to be, we prevent people from entering higher cost emergency systems. So starting off, I'd like to take the time to explain why this work matters to me personally. My brother Jack is 32 years old, he's autistic, and because of my family and the knowledge, time, and capacity they have to navigate income supports, housing systems, and advocacy, my brother is safe. When I come to work, I see my brother and the people we serve every day. I see people with developmental and intellectual disabilities that they were born with. I see people with disabilities created by poverty, untreated mental health conditions, substance use, psychosis, dissociative disorders that develop after years of sleep deprivation, trauma, and living in constant fear on the streets. Unlike my brother, many of the people we support are navigating this all alone. Drop-ins exist to be a bridge, not just to services, but to human connection, dignity, and trust. That trust starts with something very simple: being welcome, being fed, and being treated like you matter. Every day, drop-in staff call central intake. Every day, our participants are told, often multiple times a day, call back in 2 hours. I've watched them wait 2 hours, and then 2 hours more, and then 2 hours more, and I've watched people die while they waited. So where do you sit while you're on the waiting list? Drop-ins are the place people sit when there's nowhere else for them to go. Echoing what another deputant said, our staff rotate between responding to overdoses, to serving meals with a smile, to listening to disclosures of traumatic events, to running social engagement programs like bingo, to finding ways to document our qualitative impact into quantitative data for grant reports, all in just a couple of hours, and it is exhausting. Why this matters now, the city's budget documents and showing rising demands across housing, emergency response, public health, and social supports, alongside operating budgets that are largely consumed by inflation and cost of living adjustments. Frontline services like drop-ins are being asked to absorb more pressure without meaningful increases to our operating budgets, even as we see needs grow. Our drop-in is stretched thin. Like many across the city, we rely heavily on temporary contract staff. These staff do not qualify for benefits, do not access dental care or mental health counseling, and are forced to rotate out seasonally, not because they want to leave, but because they cannot wait until the last minute to find out whether project grants are approved so their contracts can be renewed. As a result, we spend additional operating dollars every year retaining new staff, replacing workers who would have stayed if they were able, and if there were permanent roles with benefits available. It's not just hard on staff, it's inefficient. If the Toronto Support and Shelter Services budget approached drop-in staffing in a way that supported more permanent full-time positions, the city would save money in the long term through reduced turnover, lower retaining costs, and more experience and effective frontline response. And staff would be able to do this work while earning a living wage, accessing benefits, and being supported to stay in roles that are emotionally demanding and critically important. When preventative systems like drop-ins are stretched too thin, the costs don't disappear, they shift. They show up in emergency rooms, shelter wait lists, encampments, crisis calls, and neighborhood conflict. Our staff are trained to de-escalate first, to build relationships, and to keep people coming back safely. This approach preserves dignity, builds trust, and prevents crises from escalating. Drop-in programs are a critical part of Toronto's social infrastructure. They're low barrier, they're cost-effective, and they're community-rooted. As you make decisions about the Toronto Shelter and Support Services operating budget, I urge you to recognize that drop-ins are core preventative systems, recognizing that these stable services require stable, supported workers. Investing in permanent, well-supported drop-in staff keeps people housed, connected, and alive, and it reduces pressure across the city's systems. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Oh, you banged the microphone. No questions? Monica, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next deputy I have is Evelyn Butler. Hi, Evelyn, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Through you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. I'll be keeping my remarks brief so everyone has a chance to speak. My name is Evelyn Butler. I'm a resident of Toronto. I was born and raised here. I'm a community advocate, a frontline worker, a recent federal election candidate, and someone whose life has been shaped by the choices here at City Hall. I'm here today to speak about the 2026 City of Toronto budget, a framework that determines who gets to live here and who will continue to be pushed closer to the edge of poverty if we don't change things. The new austerity budgets, cuts to investments and the job sectors has made it economically unfeasible to independently support myself. That is my why for being here today. I'm a proud 31-year-old woman, and as a contributing member of our workforce and society, the current economic situation here in the city is distressing to me. That being said, I lend my voice here today to support your motion to approve the city budget in its current form. I ask for consideration, however, of one caveat to the section on affordability in public transportation. When we talk about transit, I want to be clear. Fare relief matters. I appreciate Council's diligence behind the current proposals in the budget for making trips free after 47 rides each month. That being said, I do still personally believe that there can be more work to be done to address the needed changes in structural affordability. With many Torontonians living on the brink of poverty due to the continuing mass layoffs, free trips after 47 rides still requires a lot of upfront costs that many may no longer be able to afford. This leaves transient workers, shift workers, and people with unpredictable or no income paying some of the highest transit fares in North America. My ask is the following. Instead of focusing on a frozen fare at $3.35, I would humbly ask City Council to use this budget and push harder collaboratively with the province and the federal government to lower the rate on the user's end. I have seen firsthand how restrictive fares are for transient workers who are often in between jobs, and especially in the middle of this harsh winter where people are having issues with traveling, obviously. We have the chance now, as we have had over the years, I believe, to look to our partners across the ocean in Europe and learn from their affordable, more forward-thinking, grounded models. As a global city, Toronto has fallen behind in first-rate transportation. Members of Council, this is your moment to be able to do the right thing, not the easy thing, and push for a transit affordability package that will allow Toronto to thrive and rebuild in a post-COVID world. Not by merely managing the slumps that we are in, but by building in resilience and moral clarity instead of falling back on perceived political conveniences. Torontonians need hope. I and my colleagues hope that Council will renew the fight in giving residents a budget that they can stand behind instead of saying, what a wasted opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. As a formerly unsuccessful federal candidate myself, glad to see you're still fighting. Are there any questions for Emily? No. Thank you very much for your deputation. Sebastian Tanzil. Hi, Sebastian, welcome.
Hi. Members of the committee, thank you. I'm Sebastian, and I'm a resident in Kensington Market, and I serve on the board of the Kensington Market Community Land Trust. So I'm requesting that the City of Toronto increase the 2026 multi-unit residential acquisition, MURA, budget to $100 million to help keep properties off the speculative real estate market. And our land trust, as you know, is a community-led nonprofit organization that seeks to remove property from the for-profit speculative real estate market and acquire them for community benefit. On October 3rd last year, I received a text from our neighbors at 38 Kensington Place that their property management illegally changed the locks to their rooms, confiscated personal belongings, and threatened to evict all the tenants. As noted by one of our Land Trust's co-director, Zach Bradley, it was so that Vault Capital, a private capital firm, could recoup investments to their property by evicting the pre-existing tenants. 38 Kensington Place is a store that is all too common across many neighborhoods in Toronto. Ghost hotels and private capital extract maximum profits on the speculative real estate market in rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods like Kensington Market by displacing long-standing, pre-existing tenants from their once affordable homes. On October 14th, I, along with many other Toronto residents, participated in the consultation at St. Lawrence Market for the pre-budget talks. And the results from this pre-budget consultation show that the most important priority for Toronto residents was providing affordable housing and shelters. This doesn't surprise me. Since 2021, the Toronto Street Needs Assessment Report has shown the number of homeless people in Toronto has more than doubled, and each night, the shelter system is at capacity with demand far exceeding capacity. While it's admirable the City of Toronto is looking to build more affordable housing and shelters, one of your very own reports from 2023 states that for every new affordable unit built in Toronto, it is estimated that 15 existing private affordable units are lost. Protecting and preserving Toronto's existing affordable housing supply is critical to advancing the city's housing goals, particularly in light of Doug Ford's disastrous Bill 60, which will only push many more tenants in the private real estate market into homelessness. Last summer, a motion by Councillor Diane Sachs released $1.2 million of MURA funds to help our land trust purchase a 26-unit affordable rental housing building, including 11 commercial units. As a result of our acquisition, all the pre-existing tenants who were formerly without rent control were brought into rent control. Additionally, many tenants were able to apply to have their units become rent-geared to income. That is the power of nonprofit ownership. Many tenants like myself understand that having a community-focused nonprofit as your new landlord is an immense game changer. It stabilizes rent and secures our ability to live in community with our neighbors without the constant stress of displacement. I'm therefore, again, here today to request that the city increase the 2026 MURA budget to $100 million. This could protect 600 units of affordable housing in the span of a year. This means saving 600 households from the risk of rent eviction, of displacement, and sadly for some, the risk of becoming unhoused. I invite you to imagine what community-owned housing acquisition would look like for so many of our neighbors who are facing what the tenants of 30 Kensington Place are experiencing. We have the skills and drive to make a significant impact in our community. We simply need you, our City Council, to support us with the necessary funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Are there any questions? No? Thank you so much for your deputation today. The next deputant I have listed is Emily Johnson. Hi, Emily, welcome.
Hello. Hello, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Emily Johnson. I'm a resident of Ward 14, and I'm here because of my friends at Progress Toronto. I'm an artist and an arts administration worker, and I've lived in Toronto for almost 15 years. Housing and support for vulnerable Toronto residents is a very important issue for me. I'm someone who has enjoyed safe, rent-controlled, secure places to live, and as we all know, this is far from the norm. Everyone should have affordable, safe, and secure housing. On that score, there's a lot to love in this current iteration of the budget. Huge fan of additional funding for the rent bank, rent-safe TO color coding, capital funding for more shelter sites, the city's investment in building affordable housing. All of this is essential. But what caught my eye about this staff proposed budget is that according to Social Planning Toronto, nearly 1 out of every $5 from property taxes will go to Toronto Police. A year-over-year major budget increase for police services seems like a foregone conclusion, despite communities consistently asking for these funds to be used elsewhere. Most of the proposed $98.3 million increase is for staffing, seemingly stemming from the idea that maintaining a force-to-population ratio is important to public safety when we know that, A, so many other upstream services are contribute to community safety, including housing and drop-in service investments, and B, that there are many responses that can be performed more efficiently by new or existing civilian services. As identified in the 2022 Auditor General's report on the TPS, noise complaints, welfare checks, responding to landlord and tenant disputes, these are all events that can be more cost-effectively responded to by civilian services. We require so many other city services to be efficient down to every dollar, and it seems to me that there is still work to be done to ensure that the TPS budget is as efficient as possible in response to budget constraints. It seems that the TPS is held to a different standard. The chronically underfunded shelter system is seeing cuts to operating funding because on paper it's tracked slightly reduced demand. I'm sure previous deputants have spoken very eloquently to the idea that this is actually not the case. I understand that this reduced budget is also represents a pivot away from expensive hotel shelters, but the shelter system, again, according to Social Planning Toronto, continues to turn away people every night, and this budget has no plans to reduce those numbers. And drop-ins, again, are stretched to capacity, as we've just heard. Ford's attack on renters with Bill 60, closure of safe consumption sites, and his criminalization of homelessness are all going to have effects on the need of our shelter system. Even with programs like Rent Bank strengthened, this issue is not going anywhere anytime soon. The province is trying to make our city hostile to unhoused and vulnerable residents, and we cannot let that happen. It is a tight fiscal year. So many other programs deserve the kind of increase that the Toronto Police have been allocated in this budget. Drop-in programs, the Toronto Tenant Support Program, and again, as we just heard from the previous deputant, the Multi-Unit Residential Acquisition Fund. The Toronto Community Crisis Service has been performing phenomenally, taking on mental health crisis calls and resolving a majority of them without police involvement. I'm asking for an end to police budget exceptionalism and asking the city to reallocate funds from the police budget to programs that contribute far more to the health of Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. Are there any questions? No? Emily, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
The next deputant I have is Arthur Graun. Hi, Arthur, welcome.
Oh, good afternoon. My name is Arthur Graun, and I volunteer with the Oakwood Vaughan Community Organization, a small grassroots incorporated charitable organization. OFCO started a decade ago to save a local school from being sold off, and the vision of turning that space into a meaningful community hub, a place for people in the community to run programming, socialize, and contribute with their knowledge to the building of a unique school environment. Currently, we are running a healthy aging program in the Oakwood Vaughan School and inviting the local middle school to create intergenerational programming such as gardening and fiber arts. Half of the Oakwood Vaughan residents are tenants. Many are seniors living in buildings with no air conditioning. The provision in the city's budget for a small number of AC units will not do much to prevent heat stroke among this population. What is needed is a heat bylaw, which we understand is still before council. Also, what is needed is assistance with home audits, retrofitting, and access to heat pumps, all things worthy of funding. To that point, the city would do well to fund an educational piece on climate change. In particular, council needs to undertake explaining the relationship between climate crisis and affordability. Floods increase the cost of insurance and cost the city millions. Plowing through the Greenbelt destroys farmland, increasing food prices. Planting more urban trees and creating treed boulevards will bring the city's temperature down, making neighborhoods more walkable. We are pleased to see the capping of transit fares. Many of our residents rely on public transportation. Living in Midtown Toronto, one does not need a car to easily reach downtown. We understand that provincial interference in municipal affairs is a major challenge. This includes unsafe roads due to removal of bike lanes and removal of speed cameras. The closure of safe consumption sites was punitive and dangerous. The province has also interfered with developing plans to increase low-cost rental units near transit. I'm asking the council how they will fight back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Thank you so much for your deputation today. Harris Rosen. Hi, Harris. Welcome.
Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm going to keep it quick. Asking for transparency touted by the city, specifically related to the harm reduction budget, seeking loot bag line items for crack pipes, meth pipes, tinfoils, needles, tourniquets, van delivery service. Talk minus action equals zero. The city Citizens want to know how much these items cost. Earlier this afternoon, I was watching online, and a speaker noted that crime is down, and in the same breath asked for a decrease in police funding. Stands to reason an increase of the police budget would lower crime further. Then connecting the dots between an increased TPS budget and harm reduction centers. If there is police presence on site at these harm reduction centers, obviously it will lower crime in the area, and there's been a lot reported lately, and there will be a quicker emergency response if people should suffer an OD. Thank you.
Are there any questions? No? Thank you for your deputation. Sarah Armstrong. Hi, Sarah. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Armstrong, and I live in Ward 14, Toronto Danforth. And I understand that the city is proposing a 2.2% increase to the property tax levy on homeowners. And I'm here to say, as a citizen of the City of Toronto and a taxpayer, that I have no argument with that. I think it's entirely reasonable, especially given some of the deputations I've heard this afternoon. There's a great need in the city for housing and the TTC and other worthy programs. The point I'd like to make today is I think the city has an obligation to avail itself of any reasonable sources of revenue. So in my personal experience, I think that although the city would like to make everything accessible for everybody all the time, I think that you're going to have to consider user fees in some areas. And I have two examples. One is the Toronto Public Library. I'm a regular and heavy user of the library, and I think it's wonderful. 100 branches, 7 days a week, full staffing. In the downtown locations, you've got security staff, you've got social workers, I understand. Thousands of books purchased every year. It's extraordinary. However, it feels to me totally unsustainable. So I would advocate there for maybe a second look at overdue fines for books. I don't know all the particulars of the Toronto Public Library budget, but it seems really quite unsustainable to me. And my fear is that a future government comes into office, a new mayor, and basically says this is completely unsustainable, we're overspent, and now we have to close branches and lay off people. So that is one example that I think maybe the city could reconsider. I appreciate that a lot of this is done with accessibility in mind so that people are not shut out of programming due to, challenges around income and affordability. However, there are tens of thousands of people in the city of Toronto who can afford to pay an overdue fine, and I'm one of them. My second example is to do with Toronto museums. And compared to some of the things people have been talking about today, it seems perhaps a little trivial, except where the city wastes or forgoes revenue, it means there is limited funds for really important things, like we've heard about today. So my example around Toronto museums is this past summer I visited Spadina House. I've been many times. This time I thought it looked a little unkempt, a little shabby. And my friend and I went in and we realized there was no admission fee. So this was sort of news to me. We did the tour. The tour guide told us that on rainy days, they close the third floor because the roof leaks, which I was not, pleased to hear. And on our tour, half the group were tourists from outside of Canada, and they presumably also got free admission. So I think that is ridiculous, I have to say, because it's not virtuous to provide free access to everybody and then allow that historic house to deteriorate. In contrast, my daughter and I went to the city of Hamilton, Dundurn Castle, fabulous place. If you are a City of Hamilton library card holder, you get free admission, i.e. if you're a resident of Hamilton, you get free admission. Everybody else has to pay. Between my daughter and myself, we paid $30 to visit that property. So I just raise that as an example of how the city might reconsider some of its attitudes around accessibility. There are people in Toronto who can afford to pay, and I don't think the city can afford to have everything free all the time for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question, if you could, sure. When you were talking about the library, were you talking only about overdue fines, or did you want to charge for other services?
No, but I mean, I think the library's forgoing not a huge, but a considerable revenue source there. I mean, if people are concerned about accessibility, you could say, well, we'll have no fines on children's books, or we'll cap the fines at, $5 or something. But,
So it's just the overdue that you were talking about?
Yeah, because to me, the whole thing seems entirely unsustainable. I don't understand where the money is coming to support this entire, vast library system that we have.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Moyes had a question for you as well. You sparked some interest. Have a seat.
In regards to the Toronto Public Library, yes, we have expanded our hours to 7 days a week and provide great services. But are you also aware that there's a Toronto Library Board Foundation and a board that actually raised millions of dollars for the library every year?
I had read that on the website, but I don't know the specifics around how much money they raise.
They do raise millions of dollars every
But it is a line item on the city budget.
Yep.
And
Sure.
I think if the library could be a little more self-sustaining, then there would be more money for other worthy causes in the city.
And I do agree with you that Toronto should have a Toronto Museum. Are you aware that we're looking into perhaps seeing what we can do with the old City Hall across the street in regards to perhaps turning into a Toronto Museum over time?
Well, I mean, that would be wonderful, but my point was really about this idea that there should be no admission fees at any of the Toronto museums, including for people who are not residents of Canada. I mean, the fact that my tax dollars are potentially subsidizing tourists to attend our attractions is not reasonable to me.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. The next deputant I have listed is Camille Rogers. Camille, you're online. Camille, can you hear me?
Okay.
Oh, there you are. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, councillors. My name is Camille Rogers, and I live in the Parkdale High Park ward. I'm here today with Progress Toronto to speak as a survivor of severe childhood mental illness and offer my perspective on the proposed budget. As a resident of Toronto and a constituent of yours, Councillor Perks, I ask that you reroute funding from the Toronto Police budget.
Camille, I'm very sorry to interrupt you. For some reason, your voice is quite distorted. Maybe try without your headsets in.
Sure.
Oh, so much better. Like 100% better. I'll restart your time.
Is this better?
Oh,
Easier to hear?
it was better.
So it's still not good?
The only other thing I can suggest is maybe turn your camera off and get a little bit more bandwidth. Or, oh, something just changed there. What did you do? Now you're silent altogether. Councillor Moyes has suggested that you put the headphones back on and hold it next to your mouth. I'm so sorry. I can't hear you now. Camille, I'm going to make a suggestion. I'm going to have one of the city's IT staff email or text you to see if there's a way to solve this, and I'm going to move on to the next deputant, okay? All right, thank you. Okay, Linda Nicholson. Hi, Linda, welcome.
I thought I was going to be last, but maybe I'm not last after
Maybe
all.
you're not last.
Good afternoon. My name is Linda Nicholson, and I am a longtime resident of Beaches, East York, Ward 19. Councillor Bradford. I'm also part of a Toronto climate action group called Climate Fast. It's a small core group supported by more than 2,300 people in our extended network. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about the city's 2026 draft budget. I would first like to acknowledge that this budget continues many good initiatives that were already underway, including a TTC fare freeze, a plan to expand bike lanes, pedestrian safety measures. In fact, while not under the heading of climate action, these are all initiatives that help bring down greenhouse gas emissions. I'd also like to applaud increased investments in public transit, as well as additional funding for dealing with heat safety, stormwater, and the city's corporate emissions. These are all climate-related actions, again, some that will help us adapt to climate effects that are already happening, like fires and floods, and some that will mitigate the amount of greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere. In spite of these important initiatives, Toronto is falling short of our own goals, set by City Council and applauded by Torontonians, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2040. We would now have to cut emissions by 1 million tons each year until 2040 to achieve this goal. But our annual decrease has to date been nowhere near that number. And in fact, post-COVID, emissions have been edging up. We need to take bolder action. Why not set up a pilot project to install solar panels over parking lots? They're doing it in Calgary at the Renfrew Solar Carport, where they're generating significant clean electricity. And in Prince Rupert, BC, they're piloting that province's first solar parking lot at City Hall to test technology for northern climates. Solar panels in parking lots, also called solar canopies, are also popping up in the US and Europe. So why not here? They convert underutilized space into space that generates power. They can power electric vehicle chargers on site. They reduce heat radiated from asphalt. And they can shade cars from summer sun and winter snow and ice. We can't continue to do the same things and expect different results. We know that the majority of emissions in Toronto come from buildings, mostly from their heating and cooling. We can't forget that we need a building emissions performance standard, or BEPS, that will guide building owners through a process of decarbonizing their facilities over time. And because we all spoke out about it last month, Council will hear progress on the BEPS in 2027. Sooner would be better. I think Council was surprised last month by the number of people who wrote and spoke on the importance of the next 4 years in Toronto's climate action plan. You should know that despite environment and climate action appearing as the 5th most important item in last fall's survey of the public's top concerns, in fact, so many of the items in the survey are climate related that added together, they are bigger than any other item. A 2025 survey of 125 countries and 130,000 people that was printed in Nature magazine revealed that 89% of people worldwide believe their governments should do more to fight climate change. That's a more accurate reflection of how many people in Toronto care about having a livable city and planet for future generations. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you so much. How are we doing?
Andrew said for some suggestions, so we can try her.
Okay, we're going to try Camille again. Hi, Camille.
Hello. Is this
Let's
hooray?
go.
Okay. Wonderful. Hello, councillors. My name is Camille Rogers, and I live in the Parkdale High Park ward. I'm here today with Progress Toronto to speak as a survivor of severe childhood mental illness and offer my perspective on the proposed budget. As a resident of Toronto and a constituent of yours, Councillor Perks, I ask that you reroute funding from the Toronto Police budget and instead put those funds towards services that more effectively support the safety and well-being of all Torontonians. This issue is particularly close to my heart as someone who has struggled with mental illness since I was 9 years old. Thankfully, my parents had health insurance through their work that covered therapy and allowed me to access the care I desperately needed. But many children and families are not so lucky. Every time I hear of a mentally ill or disabled person who has been mistreated or worse by police forces, I know that could easily have been me. And it still could be, especially if I were to lose my income or health insurance. So I'm here to strongly urge the Budget Committee to reroute funding from the police, who time after time have shown they are not equipped to handle mental health emergencies without escalation, and instead fund programs that provide much-needed mental health services to the public. I would like to see a portion of police funding be rerouted not only to expand existing community crisis response teams, but also to proactive measures that offer free, accessible, and non-carceral mental health care to all. I know I would feel much safer in my neighborhood if I knew there were people on call who could offer help to a neighbor in crisis, without fear of the situation escalating or ending in punishment, incarceration, or worse. There have been times where I saw someone in my neighborhood who might have needed help, but I didn't call emergency services because I was afraid that would potentially make things much worse for that person. In conclusion, as someone who has survived severe mental illness and come out the other side, I know the only reason I'm still here today is because I had access to the support that I needed when I needed it. I urge the Budget Committee to reroute funds from the police into more appropriate mental health programs, both crisis response and long-term programs, so that we don't lose anyone else who just needed the right kind of support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Camille. Thank you particularly for your openness and sharing your story. I just want to encourage you, if you know of someone in crisis from now on, you can call 211 and they will get the right kind of services. Okay? Are there any questions for Camille? No? Thank you so much for your deputation today. That concludes the list of deputants. I am going to move a motion that the Budget Subcommittee receive the public presentations on the 2026 capital and operating budgets for information. All those in favor, opposed, carried. We're going to convene again at 6 p.m. I'm looking at you. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.